Double entry bookkeeping system. Double entry bookkeeping system was developed in a city called Venice, Italy, in the 14th century. Venice used to be a seaport, and that's why it's built on water. Most of goods from Asia and Africa were used to come to the Venice, and they were further distributed into the rest of the Europe. There were lots of merchants around. Some of them were used to record the transactions. Some of them weren't recording the transactions at all. And obviously, human memory is limited. With the passage of time, people forget what transaction they had. Even those who were recording the transaction, they were recording the transactions the way they want to. So there weren't any global system of recording the transactions in which all the businesses speaks a common language. So for instance, business A has recorded a transaction and business B wants to understand those transactions. It wasn't possible for them to understand because unless that A is present to interpret those transactions to the B. There was a person called Luca Pacioli. He realized this problem and then he tried to develop a system that every business records a transaction in which they can be interpreted the way everybody understands. So there should be a unique way of recording the transactions. He was a mathematician, Luca Pacioli, and he was inspired by the Newton's third law of motion, that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Based on this concept, he derived three notions of the accountancy. That debit what comes in. So debit what comes into the business, credit what goes out of the business. Debit the expenses and losses, and credit the incomes and gains. Debit the receiver and credit the giver. Further development of this theory, he has mentioned that business and businessmen are two separate entities. Therefore, transaction between the business and the businessman should be recorded as well. So after that, all the merchants in the Venice started to use this system, and this theory became popular, and today it's a worldwide acceptable theories in accountancy. Even all the international accounting standards are based on these three fundamental principles. So the three concepts are debit what comes into the business and credit what goes out. Debit the expenses and losses. So whatever expenses and losses you have, you are paying wages or you incurred any losses, you will debit those transactions, credit the incomes and gains. So any profit, any gains should be credited. Debit the receiver. So whoever receives should be debited, and credit the giver. Whoever is giving should be credited. These are the three fundamental rules of accountancy. Those are used for recording the journal entries, and from those journals we prepare the ledger, which is also called T accounts. And further from T accounts balances, we prepare trial balance, income statement, and balance sheet. So Luca Pacioli, who has designed these three fundamental principles based on the principle that every action should have equal and opposite reaction.